Zero.
Beat of the month. Beat of the month. Gotta have me my beat of the month. Beat of the month. Beat of the month. Gotta have me my beat of the month. The Game Boy, the Xbox, the PlayStation 4. Gotta press pause cause your mom's at my door. Beat of the month. Beat of the month. Gotta have me my beat of the month. We game all month, give out points and sorts. Better look out, it's another switch port. Beat of the month. Beat of the month. Gotta have me my beat of the month.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Beat of the Month podcast. This is episode 7. We're doing a deep dive through the Resident Evil franchise. My name is Brian, and with me tonight I have Moose.
Yo.
Muff.
What up, Stephanie?
Alvin.
Let's go, Mel Bro.
Darkside.
Hey, hi.
And Bash.
Hey, too.
All right, we're going to get right into it with the first Resident Evil. This came out for the PlayStation on March 30th, 1996. So this is the game that, kicked off the franchise, was hugely successful right from the start. Is there anybody that has no experience with this game? Does everybody have some experience with the first game?
I never played it, but I'm experienced.
Oh, yeah, you are.
Yeah, I played it after I played part 2 with the kids, so I kind of went back and played part 1. But yeah, it's a good game.
Played the shit out of Resident Evil 1.
Yeah,
back in the day. Like, those tank controls, I played it many times.
Did you play it like close to when it was released, or like later in life as an adult?
No, it was right around 1996, 1997, right around that time.
So when did they release the director's cut? That's the version I played.
That's the one that I played as well. I don't know exactly what date that came out. Oh, actually, I do. That came out September 30th, 1997. So that was about a year and a half after the first Resident Evil came out. That's the first one that I played too. I don't know that I played it immediately when it came out, but probably pretty close. So yeah, Resident Evil Director's Cut is the first one that I played.
And was this the first like survival horror video game?
I mean, there's other games like Alone in the Dark.
Altered Beast.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd call Altered Beast a survival horror game.
I mean, to some people, Mario might have been survival horror, though, so you never know.
It was like Haunted House in the 2600. Like, that's basically survival horror. Like,
yeah. I actually played that.
So there's definitely games that were kind of like precursors to this. And this game actually, there was a game that never came out of Japan called Sweet Home for, I think, the original Nintendo. And that was kind of like the basis for this game. What
was that called?
Sweet Home.
Sweet Home Alabama.
Sweet Home. Like Home Sweet Home. But
like Sweet Home Alabama.
Oh.
Yeah.
Reese Witherspoon.
You saying hope or ho?
Home.
Darkside, can you help with this?
He's saying, I hope that you get a sweet hoe.
That's nice of you, Brian. Thank you, Darkside.
You're welcome. So this game started off, which a lot of the other Resident Evil games had, where you could pick between two characters at the very start of the game. So you could play as either Jill Valentine or Chris Redfield. And I know they had differences. Well, I think the game was pretty drastically different depending on who you played as. And I know for like starters, I think Chris Redfield had like a smaller inventory. They had different weapons. I only played through the game as Chris Redfield maybe once. I just always seemed to play as Jill Valentine. I don't know about you guys. Who did you tend to play as in the first game?
For me, the first time that I played as Jill Valentine because she had that lockpick.
Yeah, same here.
And I'd heard that, as a kid. Somehow with no internet, but I was like, as easy as possible,
In the Japanese version, actually, over their portraits, it says easy mode over Jill's picture and hard mode over Chris's picture.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? Oh, that's why I played as Jill, to make it easier on myself.
That would have passed these days.
And that was like one of the first games where, like, not first games, but, there weren't a lot of games back then where you can play as, like, female leads. So I think that was kind of intriguing, too.
Yeah, and she had that bigger inventory. That's why I always played as her, because she could hold more stuff. Because that's a consistent theme throughout a lot of these Resident Evil games is kind of the limited inventory. And I think with Chris Redfield, you only had like 6 slots to start off. It was like really limited when you're going through the game.
Yeah, you never get any more.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of the other Resident Evil games you can add more inventory, but in the first one, yeah, you're kind of stuck with the limited inventory that you have. Yeah, I mean, my first experience with this was before I even had a memory card. So I remember me and one of my friends would play it, and if you remember, this game also had ink ribbons that you needed to save. So
right.
you can only save a certain number of times, and
That
you
was
had
annoying.
to find items. It was annoying, but man, it really made it tense because a lot of the later Resident Evil games, when you can save at any time, it removes some of that tension. But when we didn't have the memory card, I mean, if you died, it sent you to the title screen. So we were literally playing on like a no save run every time. And
Permadeath mode.
That doesn't sound fun.
I mean, I remember as a kid, you get unlimited time and not a lot of, disposable income. So like I didn't have many games for the PlayStation. So I remember we made it as far as getting out of the mansion. And then when you come back and you get attacked by the hunter, if you remember that, there's like a cutscene that shows the hunter first person view. And I remember we just like shit our pants and saw this hunter come up. It just like one hit killed us. And that was the end of like, a couple hour run that we
How long is the game from start to finish? I can't remember.
You could probably get through it in like 5 hours.
5 hours, you think?
It's short. I mean, if you know what you're doing, especially because I know I don't remember in that game if that determined what ending you got. I know that there was a couple different sequences that you had to do in order to get like the true ending where you fought like the true tyrant boss at the end, but I don't think it was necessarily reliant on time.
How much of the game was outside of the mansion? I don't remember ever leaving the mansion. I don't think I got very far then.
At least half.
Like half?
Yeah, it's like an underground lab kind of. I mean, it might still be considered like the mansion. I mean, you're outside of it, but you're still on like the mansion courtyard probably.
Yeah, I think I remember that, yeah.
It's like a cave and stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I remember that.
But yeah, you go in that underground lab, and then there's like a great white shark that's like swimming around.
Yeah, I remember that.
So back when I played the game, I didn't actually own a PlayStation at the time. We had an N64 growing up, and I borrowed my friend's PlayStation and his games and let him borrow my N64 in our games. That's how I played it. So I didn't actually own it at the time, but that was my experience with it. It was kind of cool to swap consoles. You don't really do that anymore, but as a kid, that was kind of more common.
I know. I used to do that back in the days.
Yeah, I used to do that with the Bash. We used to swap because he had an N64 and I had a PlayStation, so that's how I played like Ocarina of Time and Mario 64 and stuff like that.
Bash, you're a good guy, man.
He didn't give me. We swapped.
I pretty much gave Brian an N64, and I'm not a good guy.
Brian can't let Bash be called a good guy. He didn't give
I gave Brian an N64 and like 20 games for like $30.
Didn't I give you Chrono Trigger for that N64? There was some deal like that.
Maybe, but Chrono Trigger is like $20, $30, whatever it was at the time. It's worth more now, but back then it was worth like $30.
Some of the kind of like the highlights of Resident Evil 1 that would continue on to some of the later games. So tank controls, Darkseid, you were talking a bit about that. Do you want to kind of explain what tank controls are?
Yeah, tank controls are... Playing it that way now sucks, but basically, if you want to turn your character in a direction, you just press left or right on the D-pad. And then to move in whatever direction they're facing, you press up. And if you want to go backwards, you press down. So basically the way you would expect a tank to control.
I remember using the shoulder buttons to turn or something. Was that not?
No.
There might have been a quick turn at some point in one of the games, but for the first one, it was just a tank.
I couldn't imagine playing that in 2020. I assume it would be so hard to play, Resident Evil 1 in 2020.
Yeah, you really look at it, it's just first-person shooter controls, except the camera's just locked like over your head. Like you play like 15 minutes, like you really just get back into it again. Like,
really?
Yeah.
You push up to move forward, and then
at the time, I playing through Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, I got really used to the tank controls for those types of games. And when 4 came out, I was actually pissed. I was like, this control's weird and I don't like it because it didn't have the tank controls. But I got over it.
Darkseid,
if you look at it,
begging for those tank controls. What were we saying, Bash?
Controls exactly the same as the old ones. It's just the camera stays behind you.
It does not.
Some of these
Y'all
that.
don't even know anything about tank controls. I play a lot of World of Tanks, and none of the tanks control like that. I don't know what the fuck y'all talking.
So some of the other things that were
Tank
Classic
controls from the
line.
90s.
of the first game. I mean, the first game is probably some of the most iconic lines because the voice acting was so cheesy.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
You know,
it
like
was it was real
terrible.
actors, right, in some of the cutscenes too, right?
Yeah, it was all live FMUs.
Yeah.
Or what is it? FMVs, whatever.
FMV, yeah.
those are kind of sprinkled throughout because I mean, a lot of the cutscenes were just like in-game engine, like with those like with the models like walking around, and that's where like hope this is not Chris's blood and like some of those
Yeah.
are like classic lines.
Jill sandwich.
Another thing about this game that the other games would have, at least for a while, was pre-rendered backgrounds. So instead of having, like, you know, you're running through a 3D space, the camera's fixed on each room you enter, and then every room has, it's like a kind of a static picture of the background. But it made it, at the time, look really, like, graphically impressive, more so than it would have if they would have done, like, actual, like, 3D environments that you were running around in.
Yeah.
Right.
Keeping the camera
If-
fixed. meant
if I
that
remember-
the environments can be very detailed.
If I remember correctly, like that game, it was one of the first zombie games I played. I mean, not counting Zombies Ate My Neighbors or something, but like I was moving around, and as soon as a zombie saw you, it would like zoom in on him or something. He'd scream, and it would scare the shit out of me.
There was like an opening cutscene when you first come
Yeah,
across like the first
when you run
zombie.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a kid,
Um,
that scared the shit out of me. I ran right to Darkseid right when I saw that.
So as far as the plot goes, I mean, the Resident Evil plot gets kind of convoluted.
Very.
So, I mean, it starts off where you're part of the STARS team. You're investigating this incident that happened at this mansion. And then eventually, as you go through the game, you find out that there's this underground lab and there's this corporation called Umbrella Corporation. And kind of the head guy of STARS, Albert Wesker, is like the main bad guy. And then it's all about this outbreak of a virus, pretty much. And I don't
Spoiler
think
alert.
the first game. Yeah, spoiler for 30-year-old game.
25-year or 35-year-old game.
We had the plot of every game in the series, like.
Yeah, it's pretty much they uncover
It's
some
the same
virus.
plot
And,
for every single game.
so this game got ported a bunch of times. I mean, it got ported again after the director's cut. There was a DualShock version that supported the analog controllers. And then I played it a lot actually on the DS. The Nintendo DS got a port.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Resident Evil Deadly Silence, which I remember it played pretty well. It was pretty fun. It's not like an ideal way to play a scary game on a tiny handheld, but it was fun.
I think my favorite part about that one was it just mapped the knife to the L button, so you didn't have to carry it in your inventory and like equip it and stuff.
Yeah, you could use it a lot more for like quick hits and things like that because it was
Like the
mapped to a
only way
separate
you
button.
would ever use the knife in that game.
Yeah. All right. Anybody have anything else about the first Resident Evil they want to talk about?
My
shit
first
out of me.
experience with Resident Evil is like 11:30 at night. I got off work, went to my buddy's house, and it's pitch black in the back room, and they all playing. I didn't know what they was playing, and I'm sitting there watching play, and I don't know where part in the game, but my first encounter of trying to figure out what the fuck it was they were playing. All of a sudden, like a jump scare zombie, like real quick, takes up the whole screen, and it scared the shit out of me. I said, I am not playing this fucking game.
Is that the one in the back? Was it in like a toilet stall?
I don't know where it was.
Might
I
have
was
been
sitting
toilet.
in the back in the chair, and they playing, and that damn thing took over the screen, and the heart just said, hold up, you have to go take a doo-doo, because it was scary as shit.
Yeah, I think Bash was asking, were you sitting in a toilet stall when you were playing? Is that what was going
I do
on?
now. Clash Royale. This little game with the little dudes, your purples and pinks. You talk about. What's that game? It's out right now.
Fall
Moose, you told me to
Guys?
download.
Among
Not
Us?
Fall
Among
Guys.
Us.
Oh, Among Us.
Among Us. Yeah, that's
You
a
playing that
doo-doo
on the
game.
toilet?
Yeah, you play that on the toilet.
That is a good toilet game.
See?
Fucking guys.
Muff had that YouTube video sitting on the toilet.
Completely different app, but yeah. Resident Evil 1.
All right, so we're going to move into Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 came out January 21st, 1998, so that is just about 2 years after the first game. There was a demo of this game that came with the director's cut that I played a lot, where it's just basically you playing as Leon up until you get to the police station. So it's not a very long demo, but I played that a lot.
Yeah, so did I.
I mean, that was cool, just that intro of the game,
Yeah.
because they didn't have a lot of the game like that, but just that exposure to like you being out in the city, because it takes place 2 months after the first game. So the virus is now spread, like Raccoon City's like pretty much destroyed already, and you can play as Leon Kennedy, or you can play as Claire Redfield, who's Chris Redfield from the first game, his little sister. What was your guys' first experience with Resident Evil 2?
I think like the first thing that ever stood out to me, like really that put it above the first game, was like in the demo, you're like about to get on like this bus. There's like a car door laying on the ground. There's like window glass scattered around. And it changed the sound of your footsteps depending on what surface you were walking on. Like I'd never seen anything like that before. That like really stood out to me. Like,
Yeah, that's a pretty cool effect.
That demo was the only experience I had with Resident Evil 2. I didn't play the full game, and I didn't play the remake that came out. So it was just that demo was all I experienced. I thought it was good back then.
For me, this was the first Resident Evil game that I even played, man. So this was like a whole new world for me when I first played Resident Evil 2. I didn't even know games like this existed at that point when I was little.
Games like
I mean,
these. He said it.
Yeah, games like these. This scared the shit out of me, but I had a fun time with it as a kid, man. Just going through it and exploring and seeing how far I can get without dying. It's dope, man.
Yeah, I had, it was scary as hell, playing through as Jill, or not Jill, Claire or Leon, I wanted to play both scenarios, to see the differences in the games. It was great.
Yeah, and talking about both scenarios, so in this game, you could play as either character, but it came with 2 discs, a Leon disc and a Claire disc. And then when you beat the game the first time, you could play the kind of the B mission, where then you carry over from that first playthrough. And then it's mostly the same game, but there are some changes where, that guy, I forget what his name is, Mr. X.
Mr. X, man.
Yeah,
Oh,
where he's
shit,
chasing
Mr.
you the
X.
whole time. And that was pretty intense.
Yeah. They should have had that for like even the first playthrough, man. Like that was the best part of the game. Like that was the most fun was running for Mr. X in that game when I was younger, man. He like scared the shit out of me because I'm thinking like, okay, I just beat the game with Leon. Now I'm just gonna play with Claire and do the same thing. But it's like this whole big giant dude come out chasing me and you can't kill him. I was like, what the fuck is this? It was fun.
What were we
they
saying back?
kill him like every time, and he drops a bunch of ammo when you shoot. You actually don't have to shoot him that many times in that game to actually kill him each time. But
And then you said he drops a bunch of stuff when you do that?
he drops like a bunch of ammo every time you knock him down.
Man, I don't even know that. I just ran away.
And I mean, it added like a whole level of a whole new element to the game because it's when you're going through the game the first time, you're just worried about zombies. You can kind of see zombies from far away and shoot them. Like this guy would just come out of nowhere and start fucking you up. It added a whole new level to it. It was pretty dope.
Yeah, and then like as far as the rest of the changes when you're doing those dual playthrough, I mean, there's one scene where you come across like a storage locker and then they say, oh, do you want to pick up both of these items? And then you're like, sure, yeah, I want both of them. And then you go through the second playthrough and then both the items are gone. So I don't think there's a ton of stuff that happens like that, but I thought that was a pretty cool touch. And then the ending, like when you get the final like boss playthrough, so the whole time, like I think William Birkin is his name. There's a new virus called like the G virus, and that's really doing both playthroughs is the only time you fight him like his final true form. So you fight Mr. X, and then you fight William Birkin at the end. I think you fight him in like a train, and he's like huge. He's like the size of like a train car or something. I remember that was like so cool playing that as a kid, like because you finally played through the game twice, and then there's like this massive boss at the end.
Agreed.
Some of the other memorable things, so they introduced lickers, so that was another big like enemy type. They had the cut scene when you first came across one, and those were like some of the monsters that were like probably the scariest to come across
Brutal
in
as
that game.
fuck.
kind of weird how they made like in the first Resident Evil movie, like a liquor was like the last boss of like the entire movie. Kind of weird. So, like, it worked.
And then some of the bosses, I mean, the boss that stands out probably the most for me is that huge alligator. Because
Yeah,
it
I
was
was
so
gonna mention.
bizarre when you're going
Yeah.
through the sewer and you come across this big alligator and then you like
Yeah, I
shoot
didn't
this.
understand that. Like, why was there an alligator in the game? Like, what made them think like, okay, this is a zombie game. Let's put an alligator in here.
Same
It
as like
didn't
the
fit
zombie
in.
dogs. Maybe that's when alligators get the virus, they turn
Yeah,
giant.
you know, they have dogs, they have spiders. They're like, we gotta get bigger. You know?
And then this game also at I think once you beat it, you unlocked. It was an additional mode. I don't think it was called Mercenaries in this game, but you could play like a side mission as like an Umbrella Corp soldier called Hunk, and then you could also play as like a block of tofu and go through. I think you only had a knife. Did
Oh,
any
I
of you
forgot
guys
about
ever
that.
play through the
No,
Hunk
no, I
and the
remember
tofu
it.
missions?
Yeah, I think I saw it in like a magazine, but I never actually did that though.
I beat the hunk mission, but the tofu mission, yeah, you just have the knife and like 4 mixed herbs to get through like the entire like thing. Like,
Yeah, I mean it was a pretty cool mode, and that like Resident Evil is a fairly serious game, but they do have certain aspects that are like funny, like that when you're playing as a block of tofu. I mean it's pretty like just kind of wacky Japanese humor that they throw into there.
actually, the tofu block, that model was actually like the kind of like the developers used that just as a reference point to like check collision detection and stuff when they were testing it. But they kind of fell in love with that dumb shape. So they actually made a special mode just so they could put that back in the game.
Oh, really? That's what I was having. Wow.
Trivia
That's
I read
crazy.
some-
All right, and then this also introduced Ada Wong. There was a couple times where you would control different characters. I think if you played the Leon game, then you played a little bit as Ada, and then if you played the Jill Valentine game, or not Jill Valentine, if you played Claire Redfield, you played a little bit as I think the little girl Sherry Birkin.
Sherry, yeah.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool, just something to change it up a little bit, where you know, kind of start from scratch, and they do that in some of the other games too, where it's just kind of like a reset, and you just play a little bit of the game with somebody else.
Yeah, Resident Evil 2 definitely improved on everything from Resident Evil 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the perfect sequel. I mean, it took what was already a solid foundation, and it just improved upon it like in every way. It was like the perfect sequel. All right, any other thoughts on Resident Evil 2?
Actually, got another bit of trivia. Like this game didn't actually have to be on 2 discs. Like at some point when they were developing it, they didn't carry a 1 somewhere or something, and they couldn't fit it all onto 1 disc. So and it needed to come out in like a couple months, so they just split it into 2 discs and just released it.
Really?
I mean, it worked out well, like the whole like
Yeah, it's
dual
nice
like
how they
scenarios. All right, so we're gonna move on to Resident Evil 3. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. This came out November 11th, 1999. So about 2 years after Resident Evil 2. So this takes place 24 hours after Resident Evil 2 takes place, but you're playing as Jill Valentine. The thing that stood out for me, I only played this game once back when it first came out, so I don't have a lot of like fresh memories with this, but I know they introduced, and I don't think they brought this back, but where there could be like, they give you an option of what you want to do. Like you'll come across a locked door and there's a bunch of zombies, and it'll say like, do you want to turn on the electrical breaker, or do you want to run down the stairs, or something like that.
Yeah,
Which I thought was pretty neat gameplay mechanic to add in.
yeah, it had different decisions like that. It also, on a few occasions, had branching paths. So like you could go up the stairs, or you could go in the basement. You know, that was very cool.
What system was that one released on?
Oh, so that was also on
PlayStation 2.
PlayStation. That was
2,
on
right?
PlayStation. No, PlayStation 1.
One? Yeah, you're right. You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, so they pumped out 3 of those games on PS1.
Yeah, I was just saying. Yeah, I also don't remember a lot about Resident Evil 3. I played through it once, and I know I beat it as a youngster, but it was so long ago. I just only thing I remember about it, kind of what you mentioned about the different decisions. And I just remember, in this game there was some guy chasing you around from the beginning of the game. There was like
Yeah, the Nemesis.
The Nemesis, yeah, that was a big part of the game. Just kind of running around shooting him with rocket launchers all game.
Yeah, so I mean that's probably direct from Mr. X chasing you around Resident Evil 2. Probably people liked it, so they decided to bring it back for the entire game.
Yeah,
Except Nemesis can actually run instead of just walk after you.
Yeah, he would
Which
run
kinda
after
makes it
you.
more of a
He would
threat.
bust through walls. He would open doors. It was.
Use the bathroom.
Yeah, you'd be like, I just need to come in and use the bathroom, and then I'll chase you.
This was the first video game I bought or I tried to buy where I got carded and they would not sell it to me because I think I was 16. I think that's the only time in my life that happened to me where I was refused sale of a video game.
I just imagine 16-year-old Brian like just pissed.
Oh, I was
pissed.
Did you go back to the same store with your parents? Or?
I think I just went to another store and they sold it to me. So
do you think they do that today? Like, do they card kids trying to buy video games, or they just say fuck it?
I bet they do, especially at like a GameStop where that's all they sell is video games. I mean, Walmart. Walmart, I think they prompt at the register. So like if you go to buy like a video game, it'll prompt at the register if you're 17 or not. So I bet they do.
Yeah, I think they do. Because video games, it's like alcohol.
Brian, when you worked at EB Games, did you card anybody ever?
It was always kids coming in with their parents, and then I tell the parents like, you might not want to buy Manhunt for your 8-year-old son, and they tell me to F off, and then I'd sell it to him. So. Another thing about this game, it introduced, I believe this was the first game to have it, there was an ammo creation system. So I think you got different like powders or something like that, and you could make different types of weapons.
Yeah.
Different types of ammo.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, different types of ammo.
Also, I think if you played it on easy mode, you started off with like a big machine gun and just a ton of ammunition. This one was supposed to be a little bit more action oriented. So they're like, we'll start you off with a big machine gun and 200 rounds of ammunition.
Did the other games have difficulty settings? So, Bash, you had mentioned in the first game it was like Jill was easy, Chris was hard. I don't remember in Resident Evil 2.
It was like two different characters, though.
Yeah. I don't remember in Resident Evil 2 if there was difficulty settings. So this might have been the first one to actually have distinct difficulty settings because there was only Jill. This was the first time you only had one character to pick as.
Yeah.
Actually, I think maybe in the director's cut versions, I think they had an advanced difficulty or something where it like shuffled around items in the first two games. I'm trying. I think there was something like that in there. I never played them, but like those extra difficulties.
Yeah, I think you're right. In the director's cut for Resident Evil, I think there was like an arrange mode or something like that. Because otherwise, there wasn't a whole lot of difference in that first director's cut. Because I think they were supposed to bring over cutscenes that were censored for the American version, but then there was like some translation issue where they didn't bring those over. So I mean, it was called director's cut, but there wasn't much of a like director's cut actually to it. And then Resident Evil 3 that introduced Mercenaries mode. So I don't remember anything about this from that game.
What is that?
In general, Mercenaries mode is where it's kind of like you're hunting waves of zombies, and then I think you get like time bonuses depending on how many you kill. Darkside Bash, you remember more about that?
Yeah, it's
kind of like play through like a third of the game in like one stretch. And you start off with like a set amount of ammo and guns. Like every time you kill something, it adds like extra time onto your time meter. I can't remember if you find extra ammo as you go.
You do. Yeah, the Mercenaries mode hasn't really changed that much since it was introduced with that.
And there's like hostages you can rescue, and they give you like even more time. And they'll sometimes give you like health sprays and stuff.
All right. Any other thoughts on Resident Evil 3?
I like that you could really game the ammo system if you knew the right combinations of powder. Because like by the end of the game, probably like by the last quarter of the game, you could throw away the rest of your guns and just use the grenade launcher for the rest of the game. You can get like 70 grenades.
I do
remember that. Just heavily using that grenade launcher, man. Like that's what I remember about the game. Just like Nemesis and grenade launchers.
Yeah, I remember at the end having a lot of leftover ammo, so I probably was like, well, I don't want to use these grenades, and then the end of the game comes, and it's like, well, I could have used a lot of these grenades. All right, moving on to Resident Evil Code Veronica. So this one came out February 29th, 2000, so very shortly after Resident Evil 3 had came out. So this was a Dreamcast exclusive. So that was a pretty big deal. Because, Resident Evil, it had came out, the first one came out on Saturn, the second one came out on N64, but it was still, at least in my mind, pretty heavily PlayStation-focused series. So
Resident Evil 2 was on N64?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I never knew that. That's crazy.
Like a big thing. Like nobody thought it was possible to fit like a CD game with that much voice onto a cartridge, but they somehow managed to compress it down. It still sounded pretty good too. But.
Yeah.
And And did you play it with the little thumbstick? What do you call it? The
I
analog?
played it with the D-pad still.
I don't remember. But yeah.
So I mean, so when Code Veronica came out just on Dreamcast, like it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I don't remember, you know, when it was announced, but I that was one of the things that really sold me on the Dreamcast, because I was big into Resident Evil. I knew I wanted to play like the newest game in the series. I only played it right when it came out, so I mean it's been 20 years since I've played it. Darkside, I think you probably have a better memory of it than I do. Do you want to kind of talk through some of the changes they made for Code Veronica, or just anything in general?
I haven't played it in a long time either, but I do remember that even though the backgrounds, they had a lot of moving backgrounds also. Like the first 3 Resident Evils, it was just a static background. Code Veronica also had that, but there were also sections where you would move and the background would move with you.
Actually, I think they were all 3D backgrounds.
Also, you could dual wield certain weapons in that game, which was, you know, weird because, you know, a Resident Evil game where you could dual wield.
Halo stole the concept, right?
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
Lewis?
Halo. Yeah, Bungie stole it. Yeah.
No, they did that in GoldenEye, man, with the dual clubs. You guys don't remember that?
GoldenEye stole it from Capcom.
Not true.
But I actually plan on playing Code Veronica this month. So
On Dreamcast or where?
no, I haven't on the PlayStation 4.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that they had that.
Lead character is what? Who is the lead character? Claire Redfield? Is that right?
Claire.
Yeah.
So I think you switch. I think part of the game you play as Claire, and then part of the game you play as Chris. But it's different in that you don't pick who you want to play as. You kind of like transition between them as you play the game, I think. Otherwise there's like a halfway point where you switch or something like that.
Yeah, there's a point where Chris ends up like climbing up a mountain to get to where Claire is or some shit like that.
So this game was also on like a mansion or something, right? I remember vaguely.
Yeah, it was like a European mansion.
Something like that, right?
No, it was on an island.
Yeah, you're on some compound in the beginning. I know that.
I think this game had like some of the best puzzles of all time. I can't remember exactly, but I just remember being like, you know, stuck on puzzles for a long time, and it was fun though. I enjoyed like trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I don't remember any of the puzzles. I mean, I remember some of the puzzles from like the first game, even though they're not really that complicated, but just because I played it so much. But
There's like the one, like I think it's pretty early in the game where you got to put all of your metal equipment in this metal detector and move on, and you got to do this part without any weapons. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I do remember that. Yeah.
This Resident Code Veronica was, I believe, originally supposed to be Resident Evil 3 at one point in development. But, you know, they moved things around and it ended up being a spin-off title, even though it was originally intended to be Resident Evil 3.
I wonder why they did that though. Was it not good enough, you think? Or that was an amazing game to me.
I think it was something to do with PlayStation and the relationship they had with PlayStation, that Resident Evil 3, it just had to be in name that it was going to be on PlayStation. But yeah, I mean, really, Code Veronica is more of a core entry to the franchise than 3. And 3 is almost like kind of the spin-off in terms of like content-wise.
If you look at both, like the controls in both of the games, I think they might have been making them both at the same time, kind of like Sonic 2 and Sonic CD. Because in Code Veronica, it came out after 3, but it doesn't have the dodge mechanic you had in 3, which we didn't mention, but it's not really important. And you still have to push a button to walk upstairs in Code Veronica, but you don't have to do that in 3.
Yeah.
So I think they might have just like didn't really cross communicate when they were making both games. But
yeah.
Well, if I remember correctly, they were trying to port Resident Evil 2 to the Sega Saturn, and they were having issues, and they couldn't get it ported at the time, and so I think they started development on in its own game, like a Sega-based Capcom Resident Evil game, and that's what Code Veronica became. Fun fact.
All right, so then moving on, the next game that came out was then a remake of the first Resident Evil game, and this came out on the GameCube. So again, kind of a switch from the PlayStation and having an exclusive game on the GameCube. I remember when this game came out, it looked amazing. And I did not get very far. To me, it's the hardest Resident Evil game, and
Are you talking about
didn't
Resident Evil
get far
Zero
at all.
now?
No,
No,
this is
Resident Evil remake.
the remake
for
of the very
GameCube.
first game.
Oh, okay.
It was hard as hell.
Yeah,
Those
I
fucking
remember that.
Crimson Heads. You remember those?
Yeah, why don't you explain what those are, Darkseid?
So if you kill a zombie in the Resident Evil remake, it will continue to just lie on the ground rather than disappear like in previous games. And if you don't put gasoline on it and burn it, it will come back to life as a Crimson Head. And it will basically just be super strong and run after you and kill you quickly.
Oh shit.
It's not all of them. It's only like certain ones, but you don't know which ones that will
Yeah,
actually.
you don't know which ones. And you have a very limited amount of gasoline that you find throughout the game. So basically you're fucked.
And that's one of the things with the earlier games that I think they kind of got rid of was like enemies that would come back. Like I remember in the first Resident Evil, I'm pretty sure if you cleared out a hallway with zombies, like you could come back later in the game and all the zombies would be back. So you really had to like conserve your ammo and not kill everything, which is something we haven't really talked about. But yeah, the whole survival horror, you're really not intended in the early games to kill everything. You're supposed to kind of pick and choose your battles, run away when you think you can avoid taking damage.
Well, I think it's only in certain areas where stuff comes back. As long as you like just only use your pistol as much as possible, you can usually get away with killing everything in the earlier ones. But
Nash, you got better aim than I do, man.
no aim.
Don't fuck with the bash.
Basically, just don't touch the shotgun until you absolutely need it.
Otherwise, I didn't play through the whole game, so I don't know how much new content there was in the remake. I know there was a couple new rooms. I guess Bash, Darkseid, do you remember anything? Was there considerable new content or just kind of little additions to the remake other than like the big graphical overhaul?
I think there's only like one entirely new area, but they do add like a few new rooms to like the areas that were already there.
Yeah, they do that. They I can't remember the name of the boss, but they add a sub boss somewhere down underground. Mansion wise, it looks amazing, and all the puzzles are a little different. Items scattered in different places, like you would expect, but pretty faithful.
Maybe one of the games that like holds up the best graphic wise, like over time, because it's just a still image with like two character models on it at most of the time. So like the GameCube only had to do like 2 or 3 characters at a time on top of a photograph. So it actually looks really good even today for a GameCube game. So.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move into Resident Evil 0. This came out November 12th, 2002. So as the name would imply, this is a prequel to the first game. Again, this was a GameCube exclusive. I think Capcom had some kind of deal with Nintendo to where when the GameCube came out, Capcom had said they were going to release, all these titles that were going to be exclusive. Yeah. There was like Killer 7, I think Piano 3, Beautiful Joe, and then I think some game that didn't come out. But then the Resident Evil stuff was like the big stuff that was going to be exclusive. So Darkseid, you just played through this. Do you want to give us a rundown of Resident Evil 0?
Yeah, it's not very good.
Okay.
Story-wise, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's a prequel, and you're what's her name? I can't remember her name. Rebecca Chambers. You're Rebecca Chambers, and she's working with STARS to try to find this supposed killer. And they're on a train, and anyway,
that's all I remember. They were on a train like most of the game, right?
Well, it seemed like it was forever, but it was only like the first third of the game. But it's you're Rebecca, and you work with this convict Billy, and basically you have to switch back and forth between each character. And there's no inventory chest in this game. So basically, if you want to save items, you just have to drop them on the ground.
And they stay there?
And they stay there. So, and it gets really annoying because the game is just full of backtracking, Specifically, there's this dumb fuck weapon. It's not even a weapon. It's just a thing you need throughout the entire game. It's like a grappling hook shot or whatever the hell it's called. And you think you're done with it, and then you realize I need it to get up to another level like 3 hours after you used it. So then you have to backtrack all the way from wherever you left it, and it takes up 2 slots in your inventory, and I hate it, and I hate Capcom for making it, and I will never play this game again, but I had fun.
As somebody who's never played it, is it worth playing through just to kind of see it?
If you're a Resident Evil fan, you'll enjoy it. You will definitely be annoyed by some of these things, but overall, I mean, it was a very forgettable story. The bosses were just large animals. You know, it's like, oh, you're fighting a scorpion, but it's a large scorpion. You know, you're fighting a bat, but it's a large bat. You know,
Zombie bat.
You're fighting slugs, but they're large slugs. You know, that's just like everything was just large versions of animals, which I guess makes sense in story-wise because you're at a facility where they were doing experiments before human experiments, so they're like experimenting on animals. But still, it wasn't really that interesting.
That's kind of what kicked off the whole T-virus thing, right? Was whatever experiments they were doing, and that's how it ended up like causing the incidents in Resident Evil 1.
Yeah. And basically the game just felt like an excuse to show, you know, that Wesker was a bad guy before he was a bad guy, in a way.
And then how does the character, so you're playing as 2 characters, you control both of them, right? How does that work?
Yeah, so basically you control one at any time, and you can control the other one, like, with the right analog stick, just kind of moving them out of your way or whatever. But if you want to switch back and forth and between each character and, like, shoot with them and pick up items, you would just press the triangle button on the PlayStation controller.
So would they just?
It would be on the GameCube. But
Would they just stand around then? Otherwise, if you weren't controlling them,
you can give them basic instructions, you know, like follow, and they follow you, or just wait.
but would they shoot enemies or something, or would that be like an instruction or anything like that?
The same thing. You can instruct them to attack or to do nothing.
Because I had that game, but I don't think I played it very much at all on the GameCube. So Brian, if you end up playing that game, what version of that game are you planning to play?
I mean, I've still got it on the GameCube, so I guess I would play that one. I don't know that I'd necessarily want to buy it again. I mean, if it was on like a deep sale for $5 or something, and I could play the remastered version, then I'd go with that. But otherwise, yeah, I'd probably just play it on the GameCube.
Or probably just don't play it at all, right?
I mean, it's the only, if you consider it a mainline game, it's the only one of the mainline series I haven't played, besides that and 6. So, I mean, I would like to play it at some point, but it's not high on my my playlist.
What made you play a Dark Side, like, recently?
It's, you know, scary movie or scary month, you know, so I figured I'd play a Resident Evil game before the deep dive.
All right.
Good man, Dark Side.
And Brian assigned it to me, you know, so. I did my homework, Brian. He pleased with me?
I have.
Just kidding.
He's got a thing to say, like, I've beaten every like exploration based like Resident Evil and like a few of the light gun games. In Resident Evil 0, I got to like the first boss and I'm done with this. I just never played it again.
That's as far as I made it. I made it to the big scorpion. That's as far as I made it.
The only one that has the palette for shit games that can sustain them.
Right. Makes you appreciate the good ones, baby.
So moving into Resident Evil 4. So this is probably the highlight of the franchise for a lot of people. This came out January 11th, 2005. Again, this was a GameCube exclusive. I don't remember, Resident Evil 0 or Resident Evil Remake being that big of a deal that it was GameCube exclusive, but this one I remember was a pretty big deal that it was only coming out for the GameCube. And when it first came out, they had said it was never going to come out to any other platforms. I think the guy who made it said that he would cut his own head off before it would come out to any other platform.
He did say that.
He said that?
Yeah.
He said it, yeah. I remember that.
He cut his own head off.
Japanese honor,
less than a year later, it did get ported to the PS2, October 25th, the same year.
Yeah.
So that seems like an awfully quick port for them to make such a drastic statement and then port it.
I think it's literally been on every system ever since it came out, like on every platform that it could possibly be on.
I bet that statement he made though probably drove up sales though. Like, oh,
It was
shit,
probably clearly not up to him if it could get ported or not, so it didn't really matter.
So this one came out 6 years after Resident Evil, the events of Resident Evil 1 and 3. So this is kind of the first one that had a really big gap. You play as Leon throughout the entire game. There might be a point where you switch to another character for a brief amount of time. I know there was DLC where you played as Ada, but otherwise you're playing as Leon for most of the game. Yeah, this was
DLC. It's just like a bonus game that unlocks like tofu mode and stuff.
From what I remember, were the zombies like speaking Spanish or something?
Yeah, so you're in like this Spanish village, and they're not called zombies, they're called ganados. And yeah, they're kind of like more human than zombies.
Yeah, they're like half human, half zombie.
Yeah, they're pretty creepy. I thought it was a pretty effective way of doing it.
Yeah.
Not really zombies, they're just like humans with like a parasite in their brain.
Yeah, the Las Vegas or whatever.
The Las Vegas, yeah.
So, I mean, this was a pretty big turning point of the series. This is where it was definitely more action-oriented. I mean, when you killed enemies, you got ammo and health from enemies directly, which you didn't get in any of the other games, at least throughout the main playthrough, except for, like, Mr. X or, like, special search situations like that.
The enemies weren't really mindless either. You know, they worked together. They flanked you. They had weapons. You know, they would throw things at you.
Right. They could run.
Yeah.
They could run, but you couldn't when you were trying to shoot. So it was pretty annoying.
Yeah, I mean, this game it had a much different control style. So it kind of popularized that over-the-shoulder third-person view. But yeah, like you said, Moose, you can't run and shoot at the same time, which I know is kind of probably hard to go back to now playing a game like that.
That actually builds up a lot of tension and scares in the game because you hold your ground if you're going to choose to fight. So I mean, if it's 1-on-1, you know, it's not a big deal. But if it's 1-on-2 or 3, and then a couple more come around the corner, you know, you're pretty fucked.
Yeah, I mean, some of the scenes in the game, like when you're in that village, and then I think like this bell starts ringing, or I think the bell rings to bring them away, but you're getting attacked by the zombie villagers in the middle of the village, and there's just a ton that are coming after you at once. And I remember you're just like scrambling around, like trying to like climb up like towers and things like that to get away from them and stuff. I mean, it was an intense game.
It was, man. And then like the QuickTime events, right? I think this was the first Resident Evil QuickTime, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was just really innovative, man. Like I think this was the first Resident Evil game where you could actually like, you know, punch and kick. I think too, like where like if an enemy, there was something like you could stomp on their heads, right? Or
you could like shoot them in the leg, and then you could go up to them and do like that like
the
quick time
kick.
event. Yeah.
Right. And then just like you mentioned, that over the shoulder cameraman was just so cool at the time. And then punk ass Gears of War stole it and kind of made it famous, right?
Well, Gears of War, I think, did it right in the way they handled it. I didn't like Gears of War. I'm not going to defend it, but the thing that I didn't like about Resident Evil 4 was that I think it came out like right after Halo 2, or shortly after, or I think it came out shortly after. So Halo 2 was all about action, and I was really into that. So going to Resident Evil 4, I just kind of was let down with the gameplay. I know it was a big step in the franchise, but at the time it didn't seem like it was a big step to me.
The only reason he came onto the podcast was to say that.
Yeah,
well, somebody's got to level set people, you know. I don't want people thinking
in any way, shape, or form.
What's that?
Well, let's
I
be
don't
honest
see how
here.
they're related. Like if I played Halo 2,
no, the time they came out, I mean,
disappointed by Resident Evil 4 because I'm not expecting Resident Evil 4 to be Halo 2 and vice versa.
I wasn't expecting it to be Halo 2, but for a mediocre Resident Evil fan, I wasn't like a big Resident Evil fan, like obsessed with each game that came out. So I mean, I didn't play it since the original ones. You know what I mean? So I expected more, I guess, during that time for the gameplay.
So I have a question. Like, how would you guys put Resident Evil 4 in your top 10 video games of all time? I guess for the guys that liked it, obviously. I would have to say yes.
Oh yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Muff, you ever played Resident Evil 4?
No, it's not one of the greatest games of all time.
I agree with Snuff.
But you haven't
Again,
played it.
have you ever played it?
Yeah, I'm active on the Twitter. I'm on Twitter.
Oh, for
Beat of the month. Beat of the months on Twitter.
All right, so that was the game that famously came up with when I said the phrase like I don't really like games like these. When Brian asked me why I didn't like the game, and I said I don't really like games like these, and I meant Resident Evil games. Brian took it as like that Resident Evil game with that play style, but I was saying in general Resident Evil games. So famously, he hung on to the games like these phrase. So anytime that comes up, we like to joke about Resident Evil 4. But
I cannot believe it. It was such a great game when you said I don't like games like these. I was like, what do you mean? This is the greatest game ever made.
You're like, there's no other games like these. But I meant Resident Evil games, that just the structure of the game where it was okay. So that one specifically had a lot of action, and the action wasn't bad, but like it slowed you down when you had to like open a door or a gate or something. You had to like put a gem in a socket to open a gate, and it just felt weird. And I don't know. I just didn't really like that.
So that ruined the game, huh? Putting gems in doors, huh?
I mean, it was just the whole pace
That
of the
was the
game.
thing.
Like the pace was always like stop and go, and that wasn't what I was into at the time.
I was just my first experience with Resident Evil 4 was playing it on the Wii. Was that like the same for any of you guys?
So I played on the GameCube first, but I did play the
GameCube.
Wii version.
Dude, the
After
Wii
that.
version was so dope, bro. It was like the best way to play that game. Like that really took advantage of that whole, Wii mode and like the motion controls. It was so dope, man.
It was definitely easier because it was just you aim at the zombie's head and pull the trigger and
Yeah.
you're getting headshots like nonstop. So I played through it a couple times to get like professional mode and things like that and even on the hardest difficulty, like it was pretty easy compared to the GameCube just because your aiming was so precise with the Wii remote.
Maybe I should have played it on the Wii then.
You might have enjoyed it
You might have
more.
liked it on the Wii, yeah.
It was almost like a combination of like gun game with Resident Evil. It was dope, man.
I want to say even Kurt played Resident Evil 4 on the Wii multiple times. So that's how like wide of a reach that game had.
He locked everything. I think he got 5 stars on like every mercenaries mode level and unlocked the Super Magnum or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
You guys are talking about Lizard or?
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the bosses. So, the boss fights in this game were so great, so memorable. There's one boss fight where you're like in this burning barn and you're fighting this guy, and then he like breaks in half and he's like super tall and he's got like almost like this centipede body. And then there's the giant you fight, and then you end up fighting them again, and you're fighting 2 at once. And there's like this big molten lava pit that you can get them to fall into. And I remember just the way it looked when you got one of those giants to go into the lava. That was like the best graphics I had ever seen up to that point.
Were those giants like those ogre-looking guys? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, I remember fighting one of those guys. I think so. I put like 10 hours or 6 hours or something into the game before I stopped. But that boss fight was pretty cool with the big ogre guy. I remember thinking that was pretty cool. So I'm not just ripping on the game only. I didn't enjoy it as much as you guys.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So you put 6 to 10 hours into it.
Yeah.
In other Resident Evil games, that'd be the whole game. But Resident Evil 4 is pretty long. My first playthrough was like 20 or 25 hours, which for a Resident Evil game it was very long at the time.
Yeah, I just beat it this year, and I probably put 20, 25 hours in.
Any other bosses that you guys remember that stood out?
There was a boss fight on the boat, right? Was that the last boss fight? Were you on that boat? And like
Spoilers.
That's like
shooting-
the first like big boss fight.
that was the first big boss
Oh,
fight where you're
that's
shooting
right,
like the rocket launcher from the boat.
creature in the-
Yeah.
You're like throwing spears at him or something,
Yeah,
right?
spears. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah, but that was like the
Tiny
first
little
main boss. Yeah, and going back to the game's length, so you start off in a village, and then you end up traveling to this castle, and there's like that little guy that's like antagonizing you, and then from there you travel to like some island, and there's like zombies with like shock wands or something. Like it just seemed like the game, like it felt like you were really traversing like a lot of area in the game.
Yeah, they have like Gothic castles and like quaint little villages and underground facilities. It was nuts.
And then, the plot of the game, from what I remember, you're just trying to save the president's daughter, and there's really not a whole lot else to it. You're just kind of escorting her around, which most of the time escort missions in games are not fun. And this game was like entirely an escort mission, but it's still, they made it work really well. I think because she was, I don't even know if she could die, or if she could, it was pretty easy to keep her alive.
Well,
Yeah,
they have
the
to pick
points
her
were-
up and carry her off the screen
Yeah,
before
they
she
would carry
dies.
her off screen, yeah.
You had a little bit of time to save her.
And there was
All right,
also
any-
that merchant.
Oh,
Remember that
yeah,
merchant?
Yeah, the merchant was
Why
weird,
don't
right?
you buy something?
That was another weird point in the game.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, I mean, that was cool. That was just like another little added thing that they threw in there. And then the item management as well. So you had that like case where you could fit more items, but you had to like maneuver things around so that you could like maximize the amount of stuff that you could hold. Because
Yeah, I
like a
remember
big
that.
weapon would take up like 8 slots, but an herb would take up 2 and things like that. I thought that was pretty, just a good tweak on like item management that made
Yeah,
it fun.
just putting it in a chest or whatever.
All right, any other thoughts on Resident Evil 4? Greatest game of all time?
One of the greatest games of all time. I agree.
I disagree. So does Muff. Muff likes Twitter.
All right, Resident Evil 5 came out then for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. This came out March 5th, 2009. This was 5 years after Resident Evil 4. This was the first Resident Evil game that was designed around co-op. So there was 2 characters. If you were playing single player, the other character, so you played as Chris Redfield, then the other character, Shiva, would just kind of run around. I only played it single player. So really, Shiva's role in the game was kind of like a walking item box that I could use to hold stuff. Did anybody play that game co-op?
Yeah, that was the only way to play it. Me and Judd played this game like a couple of times. I think when we initially started the beats back in 2009, this was the first game that me and Judd beat together.
Now, how did you like that, playing it co-op?
It was good, man. I feel like it really enhanced the game, man, because up to that point we had played a lot of Resident Evils, but this whole co-op thing really added a new element to it. So it was a lot of fun. Just yelling across the room and shoot him, just shit like that. It was fun at the time. That's when co-op was big too. Because of Halo.
Was it couch co-op only, or was it online co-op too?
We did online.
I
I
played
think
a
it
little
had
bit of
both.
the co-op online with strangers. I didn't play with anybody I knew.
You played the
Yeah,
whole
that
game
doesn't
with
count for
strangers, or
fun.
was it like certain missions? Like, how did that work?
I beat the game back when it first came out by myself. And then I wanted to get through more, I wanted to do the hardest difficulty, so I ended up playing online with people to help me out. Because
Oh, okay.
on the hardest difficulty, the computer character dies quick.
Yeah,
So,
pretty worthless.
yeah.
I actually had some reservations about playing this game at first, because it was weird for me. It's like, why are these white guys killing all these black people? Because they didn't even look like zombies.
Yeah, that was
I
a
just-
big deal when it came out.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
right?
I think it's just literally because it's in Africa and there's a lot of black people in Africa, so they're the ones that got infected. Like that's why. Like
Right.
gotta go
I
look
don't
at
remember.
That's
Was
some
that
of
a
the
big
crazy
controversial
thing
thing though at the time?
I remember it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
They
it
were,
was for a little while, and people realized it's in Africa. There's a lot of black people there. Like,
Yeah, I do like Resident Evil 5. I played it again this year. Platinumed it twice on the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4. No big deal. But I did like the whole aspect of it where they were like survival horror during the day. Like most of the game is like brightly lit. And
I
mostly
never
outdoors
really thought about
environments.
that.
It seemed like that game didn't get as much acclaim as Resident Evil 4. At least I didn't hear about it the same way.
No, it did not. It's not as good as 4, but it does control better.
can you move and shoot in 5?
No, you cannot move and shoot in 5, but when you are moving, it feels more like a traditional third or first person shooter.
I think you can move and aim at the same time. Is
Yeah.
what you can do. Yeah.
The big thing that really stuck out to me too about this game was the amount of zombies. Like in the previous game, you would, most times fight like 3 zombies at a time at max, right? But like in this one, it would be like a horde of 10, 15 zombies that you would have to fight at a time. And I feel like that really stuck out to me. Like, when I was even looking at the trailers for this game, like it looked dope as hell because it was just like so many zombies, kind of like a Days Gone in a way.
Yeah, I mean, this was definitely more action based than 4. I mean, 4 was more action based than 1 through 3. And then this was even more like they took it to the next level of just being like more action focused.
Yeah, they bring back Wesker as the villain.
Was he not in any?
Never-
He was. Did he go away?
I never mentioned it before now. He was a good guy in the first one, and he was a bad guy ever since then.
Yeah, he was in Code Veronica. I know that.
Yeah.
He was in Zero, like just in cutscenes, but that's about it. He wasn't in 4. They barely mentioned Umbrella in 4.
Oh, he's in like one cutscene, I think, like over the radio or something. Yeah.
But I
Not
don't
a very
remember him in
interesting
3 at all. 3 or 2.
Wasn't in 3. Yeah.
Who was Wesker again?
He was like the head guy of Stars. So when you're in the first game, like he's like the lead guy.
Yeah, he's like your boss.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
At the end of that first game, it gets revealed that he's the bad guy, and then he gets like killed by the tyrant at the end of the first game, but somehow he survives. I forget how they do a plot explanation of that.
Yeah, the T-virus
I'm sure
kept him alive or some shit. In 5, he's basically like Neo from the Matrix and running around in like a black, suit and doing Matrix moves and bullet time bullshit. It's pretty funny.
Time bullshit.
All right, so then moving into Resident Evil 6. So this one was released October 2nd, 2012. It takes place in 2012, so I don't know what year Resident Evil 5 took place, but I assume this is a few years after the events of Resident Evil 5. I have not played this one at all. So the only thing I really know about it is there's different scenarios you can play as. You play as Leon, you play as Chris Redfield. I believe you play as Ada as well, but then you also play as Jake Mueller, who is Wesker's son.
Yeah.
Darkseid, I'm sure you have more experience on this than me. Do you want to add some more thoughts on Resident Evil 6?
Darkseid, let me just say one thing before you get into it. This is a shit game. Now go ahead, Darkseid.
Shit game. It's terrible. You can kind of see what they were going for, control-wise, because it is an evolution from 4 to 5 to 6. But everything else sucks. The music is bad, the story is bad, the acting is way over the top, and it just controls too slippery. You can tell that when they got to the Resident Evil 2 remake, they refined it, 100 times over. But basically you're playing as 4 different characters, 4 different stories. They're all about 5 to 10 hours long, and none of them are particularly interesting other than Leon's. And it was not fun.
So can you switch? Are they like separate games then? Like when you first start the game, you can pick any of the characters and you play through their game, and then you kind of go back to the main menu and pick one of the other 3?
Yeah, so like I think the first one, you're given the option to play whoever you want to play first. I did Leon first, and once you finish his campaign, then you go play.
You gotta turn the game off after that point because it's just no battle after that.
Yeah. But then you're going to choose like Chris Redfield, and his story intersects with Leon's story, throughout, so you can kind of see where they interact and why.
Bash, you have any other thoughts on Resident Evil 6?
We actually had fun on Leon's campaign. Like the zombies in this one are actually a lot more aggressive. They can take a lot more damage. It's pretty fun to fight with them. Then the final boss takes like a half hour, 45 minutes to kill finally. It's just in like 8 stages.
Yeah, it
I
was
get
too much.
old, but then you get over it. Then the other 2 campaigns are basically they're kind of like the kind of parasite enemies, except sometimes they mutate and turn into like a guy with invincible legs that can jump far, or their arm will turn into a worm that blocks bullets, and it just kind of gets annoying after a while. Like the controls are good, but yeah, it just drags on.
Up to this point, I had I took pride in that I beat all of the mainline Resident Evil games, but I couldn't get through 6. It was so bad, and it was really made me lose my love for the series, man. It was that bad. I just didn't give a shit about Resident Evil anymore after that.
Yeah, I would agree. I didn't even play it. I bought it. I don't know if I bought it the day it came out, but I had heard it got such bad buzz. And sometimes I'll still play, like I play Sonic the Hedgehog games that I know are shit, and everybody says that they're shit. But for some reason, when Resident Evil 6 came out, it kind of took my drive away from playing the game. And yeah, I didn't play another Resident Evil game for a really long time after that one came out.
Yeah, it's nowhere near survival horror. It's an action game, you know.
Was the Resident Evil game you played recently the next one you played since 5, Brian?
So I played the remake of 2.
Okay.
Which was not that long ago. So, I mean, yeah, it's like a 10-year gap that I had where I didn't play any Resident Evil games.
Right, they had like zombies riding on motorcycles and shit. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
All right, so then moving into Resident Evil 7, this came out January 24th, 2017. It takes place in 2017. So this is the last mainline entry of the series that's happened. And this was pretty much a reboot for the series. I mean, you're playing as a character named Ethan, and you're searching for your wife who's been missing, named Mia. And it's all in first person, and there's very little ties to the rest of the Resident Evil series.
There's a couple little Easter eggs like later on, but otherwise you can play this one without playing any of the other one.
Yeah, it's really like a return to form to the earlier games, where it's definitely more of the survival horror aspect. It's not as action based. You've got limited ammo. You know, you're killing enemies. They're not dropping, ammo or health or anything like that. So this was the last one I played. I just finished this one up last night. And I played it all in VR. So I was playing it on PlayStation with the PSVR. And I thought it was fantastic. I mean, I really enjoyed playing through it. Other than, getting sick after every half hour just because of the motion sickness.
How long is the game?
It took me about 11 and a half hours to beat it.
Okay.
Right? So the how long to beat time was spot on.
Do you think this would be fun if you didn't play it in VR, or the VR what made it fun?
Yeah.
No,
I played it in non-VR, and I had a lot of fun.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But I mean, so I know, Melvin, you've been thinking about getting VR. I mean, I played probably only about 20 minutes of it in non-VR, just like running around doing like item pickups after an area I'd already explored. But I mean, the VR is just so cool. Like, I mean, it really adds another level of like suspense, and like it really amps up the fear level. I mean, I'd recommend if you were thinking about playing this game and also picking up VR at some point.
Right.
Yeah, I'd recommend playing this. But with VR, I'd also recommend this not being the first VR game you play, because it is hard on the stomach.
Okay.
I'm interested in VR.
You are, Muff?
I am.
Yeah, it's super fun. I mean, in PlayStation 4, I mean, it's a good entry-level VR setup because you can get it for pretty cheap. Yeah, I mean, I'd highly recommend it.
How does one get their hands on VR?
I mean, when I
do is you go to this place called a store and you buy the VR headset.
You're literally holding a tablet in your hand that can do it for you.
I mean,
Google that shit.
Don't I have to put that up on side my head?
You have to go buy it and then use it is how you get it.
The best way to get it, so I bought it on Black Friday last year, and it was $200, and it came with Resident Evil 7, and it came with 4 other games as well. So, I mean, I would imagine they're going to have another sale this year. So if you were interested in getting PSVR, I'd wait for the day after Thanksgiving and then see what kind of sales they have.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
my plan this year.
Yeah, Resident Evil 7, I mean, you can get it for like $10 now probably. I mean, it's probably real cheap.
What if I didn't want the PlayStation VR? What if I wanted a different VR?
I believe that Resident Evil, I mean, if you're talking about Resident Evil 7, I think PlayStation VR is the only way you can play it in VR. But if you wanted another VR, I mean, they have the Quest headset that's a standalone, where I don't even think you need a computer. It's all self-contained, but I don't think it's supposed to be very powerful. So I think there's going to be a lot of games you couldn't play. Otherwise, you'd need I think a fairly decent computer, which I do not have. So that's why that was never really an option for me, like the Oculus or whatever.
What if somebody wanted to watch something in VR?
Muff is getting to porn. That's where it's getting to.
Dark side, you ain't always gotta go. Yeah, it was.
There is a program you can download on PlayStation called Little Star, but you have to pay for it. And I have not done that, so I cannot vouch for the quality of what that would be like. That, and I'd be terrified. I'm never home alone. So there's no way I could even entertain the thought of doing something like that without,
Or
Irma.
something like what?
Put your whole PlayStation in the closet and somehow lock the door from inside the closet.
Resident Evil 7, yeah, I guess I don't really know even what else to say about it.
Probably the hardest game in the series, I think. Like, way harder than anything that came before it.
So in VR, it was so easy. Like, because
yeah, that's the thing, yeah.
Yeah, you're doing aiming with your head, so it was very reminiscent of the Wii version of Resident Evil 4. So in VR, I mean, yeah, I was getting like nothing but headshots. At the end of the game, I had an unbelievable amount of stuff. I mean, I think I had like 20 herbs. I had like 20 or 20 grenade launcher shots that I never used. And I think a lot of it in VR too is it's easier to see items probably because it's like in your face. So there's an item that you can get called, I forget what it's called, but it allows you to see where all the items are hidden, which I didn't use that often because, yeah, I felt like I was able to find most of this stuff pretty easily. So if you dig around and can find all these items and stuff, I mean, you have a pretty good stockpile when you get near the end of the game. But then they do have that spot near the end of the game where you switch to playing as Mia and you're on the boat and then they reset so you don't have anything. And that was pretty hard because you're starting from scratch and you got to regather all your like ammo and guns and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Resident Evil 7 has 2 endings also. So it's
yeah, there's like one choice you got to make, yeah.
Yeah, choose like there's the 2 ladies and it's like
no spoilers.
Yeah, Resident Evil 7 is on Game Pass, so Muff, you can play that without paying for it additionally.
How many Resident Evils are there?
I mean, mainline games, there's 7.
7.
Or if you count 0, then there's
What
8.
one are we on?
This is 7.
Well, that's good.
Bash, I know you mentioned on a previous episode you thought this had some of like the best scares in any of the Resident Evil games. I mean, when you're playing the game in the beginning, it's almost like Nemesis or Mr. X, where the dad's chasing you around the house.
It's just a fucking guy, and he can talk English, and he's just fucking like running after. He doesn't even run after it. He's just walking after it. You can't like get away from him. It's fucking great.
He's Southern, so he's scary.
How was that in VR, Brian? Was that pretty scary, or was it just like whatever?
No, there was some times where like there'd be jump scares. There was one particular spot where there's a locked door, and you finally get the key for the door. And then when you go to unlock it, this lady just jumps right in your face. And I like audibly said like, oh my God. I mean, it was like probably once every play session to where I would like audibly like silently scream to myself or like gasp. I mean, it was it was pretty scary.
Yeah, the mom boss fight in particular.
Fucking disgusting.
Yeah, disgusting.
Yeah, and the game's funny too. Like the family is pretty funny. I mean, it reminded me of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where it's like this demonic, like kind of goofy family that isn't, torturing you, but they're also like humorous in a way. And you end up fighting the dad at one point, and he's like this big. He's like completely mutated, but he's saying like, "Get your ass back to the house, boy." It's just like so goofy and funny. Yeah. Anybody else have anything with Resident Evil 7?
No, I'm looking forward to playing it. Now you guys got me excited about it.
Yeah, me too.
I believe Resident Evil 7 is also on PlayStation Now.
No, I want VR, man. Get your ass back to the house, boy. I want to see that in VR.
I too want VR.
All right, so we're gonna move into then a couple remakes to round out where the series has come. So Resident Evil 2 got a remake in January 25th, 2019. So Melvin, I know you just played through this one. You want to talk a bit about your experience with that?
Yeah, It's a good game, but I'm having a hard time with it, and the reason being is just because recently I played The Last of Us, right, and it's hard not to compare this game to that, just because of some of the quality of life gets gaps in this game, right? So first of all, you can't like, punch or kick. It's like, zombie runs up on you, you're out of ammo, you fuck. You can't like, do anything besides just, go look for a gun or look for ammo. So that was kind of tough for me. And then also it's like you can't reload before you run out of bullets. And that's a big thing for me. It's like I have one bullet left. I shoot a zombie, he's right up on me, then I have to wait and reload while he's biting me. Then to go shoot him again. So it's just kind of like some of those little quality of life things that, when I compare to other 2020 zombie games that I play, it was tough. But overall, I am enjoying it. But it's just hard not to compare it to The Last of Us 2 since I played that recently as well.
What about you, Darkside? I know you got a lot of experience with the remake.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I didn't have any of the problems that Melvin had with it, but I played it twice with each character over the last year, and loved it. Graphics are great. Mr. X terrified me.
Yeah, Mr. X is amazing in this game, man. It's like he literally like chases you everywhere in the police station. Like you can just like hear his footsteps. It's like you're not safe anywhere. It's dope. Yeah.
Yeah, you constantly hear them, and sometimes they're loud, and sometimes they're soft. And the louder they get, the more freaked out you get. He could be right around the corner, or he could be on the floor above you. You don't know.
And they made him look really good in this game too, just like how big he is, and he looks dope. He looks scary.
His face looks exactly like Dolph Lundgren. I don't know if anyone noticed that. He looks like wrinkly Dolph Lundgren. I don't know if that was intentional or not.
And that was probably like the biggest change. Maybe not. It was one of the biggest changes of the game. Is that he was like attacking you right at the beginning of the game and like throughout the game, because there's not really like an A side and B side scenario in this. So like, because in Resident Evil 2, the original one, like we said, he's not chasing you until like your second playthrough, but here he's like right at the beginning of the game.
Like a few hours into the first game. Yeah.
What are some of the other changes? I mean, the graphical overhaul. I mean, the game looks incredible.
It does. It's one of the best
story,
looking games I've seen on PS4, to be honest.
Did the story stay the same, or was that overhauled as well?
I shifted it around a little bit.
Yeah,
but
basically
the same story.
Yeah, minor adjustments. But yeah.
I think that ammo thing that Melvin described, that would drive me crazy. I wouldn't be able to get through the game.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing for me. It's like, why can't I reload until I run out?
Yeah, I don't even remember that in that game.
Yeah,
like Resident Evil 7, you can definitely reload at any time that you want.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing too, like comparing to The Last of Us 2, it's just like the story isn't as polished. Obviously, why Claire was so obsessed with helping this little girl after she has known her for like 2 minutes. It's like little stuff like that, but I mean, it's more of a video game versus like a story experience.
Yeah, I would agree.
But yeah, it's more of a video game. Yeah.
I was surprised. I know some people were saying how like drastically different it was, but I was surprised that because I had not played, a Resident Evil game since 5. I was surprised that it did scale back some of the action of those games. Where I mean, it was more action oriented than the original Resident Evil 2, but it was kind of like a good balance, I thought, where it wasn't like too over the top action where like enemies are just dropping ammo all the time.
Yeah, it sounds like it stayed more true to the original games then.
I thought it did. Yeah, other people online have different opinions.
Like, you aren't strong enough to take on like 8 enemies at the same time. That would like kill you instantly. Like you have to start like strategically running away from shit. Like
yeah, and that's the thing. These enemies, these zombies, I mean, even on the lowest difficulty setting, they will take 3 or 4 headshots before they go down.
That's bullshit.
They're tough, and you have to conserve your ammo even when you have a lot of it.
All right, and then we're going to move into the last game. Resident Evil 3 got a remake April 3rd, 2020. This came out after the COVID outbreak. I have not played this one. Bash, Darkside, I think you guys played this, right?
I still haven't played it.
All right, Dark Side. So you're the only one that's played it. What thoughts do you have on this one?
It plays pretty much exactly the way that Resident Evil 2 Remake did, with the one exception where they added a dodge mechanic. It's got the Nemesis in there, like the original does, but unlike the original, the Nemesis doesn't follow you around everywhere you go. There's really just like the first third of the game where it has that stalking Mr. X mechanic throughout that section, and then the rest of the game, it's he just shows up during, specific instances. Still, it's still a lot of fun. The game is great. They cut some stuff out from the original, but I didn't really miss it. But
Is the game really short? Because I read a review online saying that it felt more like a DLC or something versus an entirely new game. I don't know if somebody was being dramatic or what.
The original Resident Evil 3 was also very short. You could beat it in like 6 hours.
Okay.
I think I put between like 6 and 7 hours my first playthrough with it. I think that you can actually beat it like a lot quicker than that if you like speed run it. You can do it like 2 hours.
Oh, okay. How long was the Resident Evil 2 remake roughly?
Probably about 9 to 10 hours, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm at about 9 hours right now, so I'm pretty much at the end of it.
I think Emil's playing it. He's at 50 hours right now, I think.
Darkside, I had a question for you that I didn't ask on Resident Evil 2 when we were talking about that, but is this game worth playing through both Leon and Claire? Will you have a fun time going through it the second time, you think? Or is just playing through it once enough? It's worth it?
It's worth it to play again.
Okay.
You'll find out. Hey,
Yeah.
Brad doesn't know.
I played through some of the part with Claire, and I made it to where you play as Sherry, and then for some reason I stopped. But so there are some gameplay sequences that are like completely different when you play as Claire versus Leon.
I didn't get that far because I got sidetracked. But yeah, there's a lot of different. She gets completely different weapons, at least for the first part. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
Is it still considered an easy mode to play as Claire?
I actually think Leon is easy mode in like Resident Evil 2.
They got woke when that game came out, or what?
Yeah, they made life harder on women just to make it.
All right, so that's going to do it with our recap of the Resident Evil series. Bash, I know you had wanted to talk a little bit about Silent Hill, just because that's like, the next biggest survival horror franchise, and it kind of, owes a lot to the Resident Evil franchise. Do you have any thoughts on the Silent Hill franchise?
The first one, I had some thoughts, but it was just an excuse to bring up this one trivia question that I just learned recently. In like Symphony of the Night, you know who did the voice of Richter in that game?
I do
Was
not.
it Keanu Reeves?
No, it was Chris's voice from Resident Evil 1. You know who did Dracula's voice in that game?
Willem Dafoe.
It was Harry Mason's voice from Silent Hill 1.
Ooh.
No.
Yeah. Weird coincidence.
All right.
Also,
Any other thoughts?
Silent Hill's really fun. Yeah.
Yeah, Silent Hill. Yeah, it's a great franchise.
When did the first game come out compared to Resident Evil? I thought it was.
Yeah,
I thought it was on
1999,
PlayStation.
I think.
Okay, so it was on PlayStation 1?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I thought I remember roughly when that came out, but I never played it. I know, Brian, you're a pretty big fan, but I don't have any Silent Hill history really at all.
Yeah, it was definitely more like psychological horror than Resident Evil was, where Resident Evil's more like kind of the campy zombie stuff. So it definitely took a different angle to kind of the overall like mood of the game.
It kind of got less creepy as the series went on. Because the first game, like, they used, like, you can't see more than 6 feet in front of you just to, like, make the graphics look better. But, like, they got better technology, so they made it so you could see a lot farther. But that kind of ruined the horror part of it, because you can see everything in the room.
Yeah, and I think when they remade, or when they did the HD remakes of 2 and 3, they got rid of some of that fog. And then like some of the game, like you weren't meant to see past certain areas, so you'd see like like there was a boat in the water, but like half the boat's missing or something like that because it was supposed to be covered up by fog that they took out. So I don't think those ports are supposed to be all that great. All right, Muff, you got some trivia for us, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of somebody just got killed in this game. Moose, what's the game called?
What Muff gets us together?
You're playing Among Us still, or what are you doing?
Among Us. Somebody just got right in front of me.
I had one
I'll
question.
let
When Muff
him
get the
pass.
trivia together. What's if you guys have to pick between Silent Hill and Dino Crisis, which series is better?
Silent Hill.
Silent Hill.
And Dino Crisis?
Yeah, that's Capcom too, right?
Yeah, I never played Dino Crisis.
I played a little bit of the first one. It was good. I didn't get through it that far because I played it in like 2009. It was pretty fun.
I played that a little bit too. I remember that game, and it was pretty cool. It was like a Jurassic Park horror game, basically.
Remake of Dino Crisis.
Yeah, they should, right?
I'm pretty sure Dino Crisis 2, like they abandoned a lot of the Resident Evil similarities. I think Dino Crisis 2 got into the action phase a lot faster than Resident Evil did, from what I've heard.
The first one felt a lot like a Resident Evil game, from what I remember.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
I played that originally on PlayStation, the old PlayStation 1.
And then Dino Crisis 3 is like in space or something, right? It's something bizarre. That one's not supposed to be very good at all.
But it's supposed to be bad.
Y'all want some trivia?
Let's do it.
Yep.
So, in the spirit
being so enthusiastic, Muff.
He's getting sleepy. Go ahead, Muff.
Sleepy Muff. So, in the spirit of our spooky theme, and now we're into Resident Evil, which is like a lot of people's introduction to zombies and zombie video games. Robert Englund, y'all know him?
Freddy.
Krueger.
Yeah. So he made a zombie movie in 2008. What was the title and who was the main lead actor?
You said Rob Zombie?
Woody Harrelson.
Robert Englund.
Freddy Krueger actor. It was not Zombieland.
You said this was 2008?
I'm guessing, Bash. I have no idea.
Are you Googling Darkside?
No, I'm just trying to remember if I've seen any of his movies from the 2000s. Because after Freddy's, it's kind of like, what happened?
I have no idea.
2008 movies. I know like they did a remake of the Michael Myers movies, the Halloween movies back then. But I don't think he would have directed anything.
That was Rob Zombie, didn't it?
That was Rob Zombie, yeah. He did. Rob Zombie did one of them, I think.
I think Robert Englund, he was... I can't remember anything that he did.
Was it I Spit on Your Grave 4?
I know he was in an episode of Master of Horrors, and that was around that time. Yeah, I don't know.
You want the answer?
Yeah, give us the answer.
Zombie strippers.
Is that a good one, Muff?
I forgot about that one. Is it good?
Who is the lead actor?
Robert Englund?
Lead actor.
Think smuttier, Darkside.
Mark Wahlberg?
Probably some stripper, so I never saw it. But who was it?
Nobody?
Channing Tatum?
Jenna Jameson.
Fuck, I was thinking Jenna Jameson, but she was from like 20 years ago. I didn't think she was actually still around. Fuck.
So yeah, living the life. Zombies.
Oh man.
Zombie strippers, Jenna Jameson. Was that it, Muff? You got any more trivia, or was that it?
That wasn't good enough?
That was great.
You didn't even have any.
You're right. You're right. No, that was great.
2 episodes in a row. You leave trivia up to me because you empty-handed. Not that you ain't got a lot on your plate already. I know my back's sore from carrying all these motherfuckers, but you too.
I just didn't want to move on and then have you say, wait, bitch, I got more trivia, ding dang. So I figure I'd check.
I got more trivia, ding dang.
All right, so I think that's going to do it for this episode of Beat of the Month. Muff, you want to tell people where they can find us on social media?
Go to the Twitter. It's Beat of the Months. Up on there pretty much all day long. If you're up on the Facebook, it's Beat of the Month. Instagram, Beat of the Month. Anchor, Beat of the month, Gmail, beat of the month, Pornhub, beat of the month, TikTok, beat of the month.
We have
We have a
TikToks?
TikTok.
Yeah, we're on TikTok.
It's where Muff
Doing
does
what?
his zombie
Also,
strippings.
if you're trying to if you're trying to find good podcasts or start up a podcast, a very good app to get is Good Pods. You can find us up on the Good Pods as beat of the month.
All right, there you go. So next episode, 2 weeks, we're going to do our scary games that we played in the month of October. We're going to go through our
Yeah.
top 3 scary games of all time. If you send us an email to beatofthemonth@gmail.com, we will randomly pick someone to get a digital download code for the game Carrion for the Nintendo Switch. So send us an email. You'll get a free game. Your odds are very good if you send us an email. Then you will be chosen for the free game Carrion on the Nintendo Switch. If you don't know what that game is, check it out. Check out a trailer. So this is going to do it for the Beat of the Month. Thanks, everyone, and we will see you next time.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
Coge low, cogedlo, cogedlo. Cogedlo, 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 cogedlo. Cogedlo!
Actually, Muff, we covered Resident Evil 3. We didn't get your in-depth review of Resident Evil 3.
Here we go. Here we go.
Yep.
That's your review, the Bears
That's
one?
your
Is that-
review.
Yeah. That's his
The only
review.
thing that matters right now, baby.
You're not
4-1. Huh?
You're not paying attention.
Well, no, y'all talking about games that I clearly said after the first one. I said I ain't playing this shit.
But you said you played 3, right? No?
Thanks for your contributions.
Is there one called Raccoon City?
That is not officially in any of the titles. Well,
There's like Operation Raccoon City as well as
Oh,
like
shit,
online
there is
games
one.
that no one ever played.
Yeah, that's the one I played.
Yeah.
Is
Wait,
that
you
really the one
played
you played?
Operation Raccoon City?
Raccoon City, yeah.
Why don't you give us your thoughts on that? I'll fit that in somewhere.
No, that's okay.
All right.
I played
Does anybody-
Resident Evil Survivor. Are we going to talk about that one?
No.
I'm just kidding.
Cogedlo, 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 cogedlo. Welcome. Got a selection of good things on sale, stranger. What are you buying?
Huh?
What are you buying?
Huh?
What are you selling?
Zombie strippers.
Ah, I'll buy it at a high price. Cogedlo, cogedlo, cogedlo.
Welcome everyone
cogedlo.
to another episode of the Beat of the Month podcast. This is episode 7. We're taking a deep dive through the Resident Evil franchise. My name is Brian, and I'm with Moose,
Yo.
Muff,
What up, Stephanie?
Melvin,
What up? What up?
Darkside,
Hey, hello.
and Bash.
Hi.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into it with the first Resident Evil game. This came out March 30th, 1996. So I guess
Did you say we're doing a deep dive on Resident Evil games?
No,
all
he
the
didn't.
Resident Evil games.
Okay.
I said that,
Even
right?
Like, we're getting
even
into it,
number
but
No,
not-
you
3.
didn't. Yeah, you didn't introduce the topic.
Did I not?
No.
We're doing a deep dive on all the Resident Evil games, the mainline.
Yes, he
number
did.
games.
I did say that.
No, he
did
didn't.
say that.
No, he didn't.
No, he didn't.
Yes, I
He
did.
didn't.
Yes, he did.
Yes, I
No,
did.
didn't happen.
You're gonna have a lot of editing to do.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you need to keep
He
this
just
in
said
because
he said it's the
they need
he
to
said
know
it's the
the
Beat of
type
the
of
Month
shit that they're about to
podcast.
listen to.
Then he introduced us, and then he said, "All right, we'll get into it."
No, I said
Brian
we're gonna
did
do.
say the Muffin
I said
Stockholm syndrome.
we're going through the Resident Evil franchise.
Yeah.
100%.
Me and Darkside are crazy. Then I guess.
No, we're clearly the ones that are.
I'll be 100%
normal.
honest.
Anyways,
I was
now
not
that
paying
we've
attention,
established
so
what
I
we're
don't know.
doing, continue.
Bash, did I say it or not?
Think you said it.
I 100%
Okay.
know that I said it.
I say legit he said it and y'all just disregard and talks amongst each other.
What?
I didn't hear him say it. I was thinking the same thing Darkseid was thinking. Like, why didn't he introduce what we were talking about?
Muff, 9 times out of 10, his response is, huh? And he's saying that he heard it.
I mean, Melvin's sitting there playing the Switch and yawning during the intro, so it's not a shock he didn't hear what I said.
And watching the Bears game.
Yeah, what are you
The
playing on
Bear
the Switch?
game's on.
All right.
I
Well, I'm
gotta watch
sure
the
if
Bears
you said it, you'll throw it back
Beat
in your
of the
face
month.
later. So
Beat of the
let's
month.
move forward.
Gotta have me my beat of the month. Beat of the month. Beat of the month. Gotta have me my beat of the month. The Game Boy, the Xbox, the PlayStation 4. Gotta press pause cause your mom's at my door. Beat of the month. Beat of the month. Gotta have me my beat of the month. We game all month, give out points and sorts. Better look out, it's another Switch port. Beat of the month. Beat of the month. Gotta have me my beat of the month. Beat of the month. Beat of the month. Gotta have me my beat of the month.